Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great day to be a Kiwanians. Kids need Kiwanians, and Kiwanians need you. And thank you for being with us today. Obviously, I'm not Stacy. She and her husband are out in California. He's getting ready to participate in the Bar Association function out there. So although she told me I wouldn't have to do anything until next October, here I am for the second time already, and I'll be here again next week. So I'm Buck Lattimore. Good to be with you, and thank you. So now let's repeat our defining statement together. Kiwanis is a global organization of volunteers dedicated to improving the world, one child and one community at a time. Our Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now our invocation by Andy Wood. Andy? Well, I declare. Let all of us together, we'll say a word of prayer for Andy. Would someone like to do the invocation, please? Okay, we got you right. That's the first one I heard, okay? Well, I didn't say come up here, but I don't
think y'all can hear me.
I don't know, I'm kidding.
Maybe. Hey, be quiet, Alexander. Let us pray, please. Lord God, we thank you for this club. Over 100 years, we've served the people in Wake County. I thank you for all these members and their families. In Christ's holy name, amen.
Thank you, Gary. We appreciate that very much. If someone will bring me do we have any guests today? Robert, we'll let you introduce your guest.
Stand up. It's my pleasure today to have Ennis Wilson. Ennis moved down from Maryland to open the Thompson Creek Thompson Creek Window and Door Company. And he's got 4 kids, the youngest 15 and the rest adults. Welcome, Ennis.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have a guest today? Hey, Jefferson.
Hey, my guest today is Jason Tyson. This is Jason's 3rd visit. Grew up in Fayetteville, 3rd generation Kiwanian. If we accept his application, told him it might be iffy if I sign off, but I think maybe we'll get Phil to sign on there. I don't know. But works at the Department of Insurance in their communications director, UNCW, Wake Forest for education. So hopefully we'll get his application today.
We certainly need you to be a member of our club. Thank you so much. That's right. I said we certainly would like to have you. Isn't that what I said? Do we have any other guests? Yes.
I have Alex Pulley here. He's a former member. He's moved down to Beaufort. He's an ADA now.
We appreciate you for being back today. Any other guests? Well, welcome to everyone that is here. This must be a day for absences. Francis was supposed to do the membership welfare, and Francis is not here, so that means Buck stands it again. The birthdays. Andy, we've already done it. You're down. Appreciate it very much. You notice this meeting has gone downhill ever since I said we are starting now, so let's just keep it going. Let's take a look at who we need to be thinking about that are our members that are either under the weather or not here for some reason. Leslie Jones is recovering from back surgery. Keep her in mind. Charlie Wheelis is still recovering at home. Please think about him. Randy Hartley has had some complications from surgery. We want to keep him in our prayers. Howard Hadley is recovering, and he would love a card. He said that word. He'd love to get a card from some of us. So if you can remember that and send Howard Hadley a card, he would appreciate it. Also, Nancy Taylor is recovering, and Bob Brooks has sent word that he will be back soon, and we will welcome him when he comes back. Now, let me make some announcements. All of you can recognize those folks as you read them individually. We want to say happy birthday to all of them, especially here at this holiday season. It's a great time to have a birthday, unless you were a kid and then you had birthday and Christmas together, and that could cause some problems back in the days. Let's take a look at a couple of things. Next week is going to be our actually Christmas meeting. We have a country singer from a neighboring county, Paige Johnson, who writes songs. She was trained in Nashville, and she's done the opening act for a number of country music specials. She'll be bringing us a country Christmas theme, and that should be fun. But next week is also Ugly Sweater Day. Competing early, we appreciate it. We'll remember what that is. If everyone who would like to would wear an ugly Christmas sweater for our meeting next week, it would be appreciated. We're not trying to scare our guests away that day, but it should be a fun time. That'll just add a little excitement to our meeting. So it'll be Ugly Sweater Day next week. Please take a look at your weekly emails. You'll get weekly emails about what's happening at our club and what our speaker is going to be. Remember, after next week, we'll be taking 2 weeks off and then come back in January. So do read your weekly emails. The Salvation Army, we did a great job as Kiwanis ringing the bell for the Salvation Army last week. If you didn't participate in it, you missed a joy. It was a lot of fun. We had the Action Club there. We had a number of our members there. It was a fun event. And I tell you, I've never ceased to be amazed at the people that look like they haven't got a nickel to their name, and they'll find a $5 or a $10 bill in their pocket and put in that kettle. It's just a heartwarming situation. The Boys and Girls Christmas Party is this coming week, December the 15th. We still need volunteers. You received an email that you can volunteer. Please do that. And this is in advance, but April the 28th is going to be our charter night. So we're planning a big charter night this year. It's a big event, and we will go from there. Yes, ma'am.
We also need a greeter for next week. So if you can greet, please let Grady Jackson know. Grady, raise your hand. There you go. Okay, thank you.
Did you get one right then? Way to do it. Okay, thank you so very much. You notice Dick is over here at the table for Poe Elementary School. Last year, we did gift cards to kids in need at Poe Elementary School. And we ask you out of your own pockets to give what you could to make that happen. And last year, we raised $4,500. As of this morning, and not counting what came in today, we'd only brought in $1,700. We have a long way to go. This is totally on your contributions. It is totally voluntary. But if you can help the Poe Elementary kids on the way out, see Dick sitting at the table with a sign that says Poe Elementary, and give him a check for what you can to help the kids. This is for the kids. And if we were able to do $4,500 last year, we don't want to do less than that this year. We want to do everything we possibly can to help those kids out. So before you leave, remember Poe Elementary School. Okay, does anybody else have any announcements to make?
I have two guests with me today.
Okay, two guests.
Sanu Gautam and Pashoy Ibrahim. They are both members on my team at Blackwell Mortgage.
Great, well, we appreciate that and welcome so very much. Thank you. Any other business that needs to come before our meeting before we have our speaker? Well, let me go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. We are pleased to have a judge with us, in addition to the judges that we have as members. But Judge Ashleigh Parker Dunston is a former member of this club, and we appreciate the fact that she's coming. She is a district court judge, the 10th District. She previously was an assistant attorney general in the attorney general's office, and also an assistant district attorney here in Wake County. She has a BA in psychology from Wake Forest. She had got a law degree and graduated cum laude from North Carolina Central University. She's been practicing law since she was 24 years old. And at age 30, she became the youngest African-American female ever to be a district court judge in this district. She is a trendsetter. Her philosophy, judicial philosophy, is summed up by the term REAL, R-E-A-L. Respectful, efficient, active in the community, learned in the law. Judge Dunston served as one of 2 abuse neglect judges in our district, and she is the lead child support judge. And she's going to talk to us about children's issues here at this important time of year. She's just recently been elected president of the 10th Judicial District Bar Association and the Wake County Bar Association. And unfortunately, because of those obligations, she has had to resign from our Kiwanis board. And we wish her the best and we want her back. She has 2 children, Isaac and Isaiah, and we want to welcome Judge Ashleigh Dunston.
Good afternoon, Kiwanians. I can't say fellow Kiwanians, but I'm always one at heart. It is so good to be back home amongst you all and just see so many familiar faces. It is just such a pleasure. I see a couple of things have not changed. Phil still sits on the front row, heckling whoever is speaking. Jefferson is still recruiting everybody to be a member. So see, some things never change, but it's so great to see you all. Lee, that big old smile, you can't miss it. All right, well, I wanted to talk to you guys today about, I'll back up a little bit, exploring the Wake County's foster care system. I just always appreciate the fact that you allow me to talk about our courts. I think this is probably I think I was counting my 3rd time presenting to the Kiwanis Club, but as was stated earlier, is it up, Courtney? Oh, what's up? Thank you. Okay. That I really want to talk about the foster care system here in Wake County. As you may remember, back in, I think, LJ, correct me if I'm wrong, was it June, July? Sometime this summer, the board voted that we would donate $4,000 to our children in foster care, and we did that. So please give yourselves a round of applause for supporting Wake County foster care system. And due to your generous giving, I'm gonna talk more a little bit about where that money went and how it was spent. So that was me 5 years ago when I was a young judge. You can see what happened. The courts have weighed me down. But as was stated in my bio, I am one of 2 abuse, neglect, and dependency court judges. In order to be assigned to that courtroom, you have to have training to be a juvenile certified judge, which is a 3-year, well, 2-year technically, COVID made it 3-year training that I completed to ensure that I was aware of child issues, mental health, substance abuse, et cetera, and so forth. And so with that, being one of those 2 judges, we have court every other week, and I personally have 335 out of the 652 cases that we have currently pending of children in foster care. I say all of those are my babies. They are just as important to me as Isaac and Isaiah, so I make myself available by phone if anyone needs something, but I am also available and on call 24/7 every other week, so this is my on-call week. So if something were to happen, someone were to be picked, they had to pick up a child in the middle of the night, meaning that they were abandoned with a car, they did a drug sting, or just anything happened, and there was something that happened in the middle of the night, they would call me and I would have to sign an order to allow CPS to take custody of that child. So that is kind of where we are. Like I said, we have so many cases that we are managing every other week. The legislature requires something that I love, which is amazing, that we have to touch cases very, very frequently. So we're talking about every 30 days, every 3 months, or every 6 months. At maximum, every 6 months, I am touching my children. I know what's going on with them. I'm seeing what's going on. I'm making medical decisions for them if necessary. I have my hand in their life to make sure that they do not fall through the cracks or through the gaps. And so that's one of the amazing things that I really love about that courtroom, is the ability to really touch my children as often as I can to make sure that they have what they need. And so what is typically handled in these type of courtrooms, because I know you're like, abuse, neglect, and dependency, what is that? Well, abuse is defined by statute as the physical, sexual, or emotional maltreatment of a child. This can also include human trafficking, which is very frequent here in Wake County. Specifically with our teens, our older teens, our 16, 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds that are running away. Human trafficking is taking place in our hotels, tragically. Also, any minor child, like I said, who is a victim of human trafficking, that should be reported. And then neglect is different. Neglect is the failure to give children the necessary care that they need. Abuse and neglect are the two most popular. The most popular one is neglect. That is the one that I see the most often. Dependency is the least amount of cases that I have, and that is one where a child needs assistance or placement because the child does not have a parent, guardian, or custodian who is taking responsibility for the children's care or supervision. What I will tell you is I'm starting to get more dependent children, and the way that that's happening is a lot of 16 and 17-year-olds have severe mental health issues, and the parents are unable to manage them. So therefore, they're leaving them at Holly Hill, they're leaving them at Wake Med, they're leaving them at places, and CPS is having to be called in, and we're having to take custody of those children because the parents feel like they cannot do anything else with them. So that would be a dependent case. As you can see, there's no neglect necessarily, there's not necessarily abuse, but the children are determined to be dependent. So who is a mandatory reporter? What's that finger pointing at? It's at y'all. You, me, all of us. We are all mandatory reporters according to statute 7B 301, that any person who has cause to suspect that any juvenile is abused, neglected, or dependent, even if you're not really sure, you have the obligation to report. You can also report anonymously, or you can actually provide your information, but your information would never be provided to the individual that you are reporting. That is only going to be used later in case you need to be called as a witness or something along those lines. So if you suspect a child that has been abused, you must say something. Absolutely, please say something, because our children need us. As we are Kiwanis, that is the most important thing, are our children. And so it's better to report, have it be investigated to see what happens, and get those family services. That's the best thing to do, than to just maybe just say, well, it'll figure itself out or something along those lines. During COVID, it was an interesting time because most of the reporters are teachers that would report students not being present or something along those lines. And because everyone was virtual, we did not have that as often. So a lot of children were extremely abused, probably even more so than normal, because of the fact that there was not anyone necessarily reporting it. It was interesting, the reports and how they changed even during COVID, because they would say something like, the parent would be walking around naked in the background during the video or something along those lines. That was kind of like the only way that the teacher could see that something wasn't right in the house. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, you won't get to see the physical abuse of the child, or if the child is tired or sleepy or hungry, or just some of the other things and the things that we're able to see whenever they're in the schoolhouse. So that was a little bit different during that time. So typical cases that I see involve physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. I see severe mental health issues of parents and or the child. There are severe behavioral issues with the child that the parent just cannot manage. Parents being incarcerated, parents suffering from substance abuse, parents having an intellectual disability, and unexpected death, especially during COVID. Children were losing both parents. They were having to go into care. And then the one that I'm seeing now, that if you really want to know what will tick me off, is an adoptive parent returning a child. And I have several of those that are very frustrating. So I won't, that's another presentation for another day. So statistics for you is that 1 in 8 American children are abused or neglected by the age of 18. 1 in 17 children will enter into foster care. The rate of foster care placement increases 1 to 9 for Black children and 1 to 7 for Native American children. Upwards of 70% of children that are in the foster care system end up in our juvenile delinquency, juvenile delinquency courts as well. 50% of foster youth would not graduate from high school on time. 48% of girls in foster care become pregnant by the age of 19. 60% of child trafficking victims have histories in foster care. 33% of homeless young adults were previously in foster care, and kids in foster care are 4 times more likely than other children to commit suicide. So as you can see, this is one of the most difficult courtrooms. Jefferson, you nodding your head over there? Yeah, did you? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Jefferson, we know, like most, the judges don't really want to go in this courtroom. I'm gonna be honest with you, just because of the heavy nature of what we're seeing. But the biggest thing about it is like the purpose of the courtroom, right? Because the thing about it, by the time I see a case, CPS has done everything they can to avoid putting the child in foster care. That's one thing I can say that is amazing about the Wake County child support system. Child welfare system. In the sense that one thing that they really, honestly, there's some cases I'm looking like, we should have took this kid a long time ago. Other times, I'm glad that they continue to work with the family with in-home services and provide them that. Because the goal of abuse, neglect, and dependency court, number one, is reunification with the parent. That's the first thing that we want to do, because we know the effects of foster care, because we know those statistics that I just told you about. We want to make sure that we are trying to do our best to get these kids back home with their parents. But the only way that we can do that is if the parents are willing. Right? We will provide them all the tools they need, the mental health therapy, psychological evaluations, substance abuse, you name it, we'll definitely provide them that. On top of that, sometimes it's not the parent, it's the child. So we will work with the children to make sure that they are in treatment, to receive what they need. If they're having substance abuse issues, all of those type of things, support, and those, all of those things are things that we will work on to try to reunify with the parent. The other thing that we try to do before we put a child in foster care is the statute requires that we place children with a relative or a fictive kin. So like a godparent or just a family friend or something along those lines. We will look at all of those individuals before we try to put them in foster care. We want the child to be familiar with the person that they are with. We want them to have some type of relationship with the person that they're in care with. And we call those kinship placements. The thing about the kinship placements, they are amazing because of what they provide to the child as far as that support and keeping them out of the foster care system. However, they do not receive financial help unless they become licensed to be foster parents, which is it can be a year-long process, and it's can be extremely challenging for some individuals that want to do that. So kinship care is something that is, like I said, extremely helpful, but you also have to have the financial means to be able to support these children without having that additional $400 or $500 a month. If the parent is not cooperative, so this is usually a multi-year process. I'm not just gonna, like within the first 6 months, say, okay, I'm terminating your rights. It's usually after a year and a half, something along those lines. If the parent is not cooperative, then we'll begin the process of termination of parental rights, which is basically essentially we call it the death penalty of parents. Because at that point, their rights are terminated to their children. They have no estate rights, nothing along those lines, that they have no ability to have any custodial control over their child in the future or anything. But that is the only way for us to have them be placed up for adoption, is that the rights have to be terminated first. So that's only if the parents are not cooperative. And then we also have the guardianship piece, which also allows the person to have a legal right to the children. That's less invasive than adoption. So our current youth in foster care, this is provided to me from Wake County. We currently have, between the ages of 0 to 17, 450 children. And we have 18 and up, we have 54. So these are children that have aged out. There's an 18 to 21 program. So we continue to support them as they are aging out. Think about when you were 18 years old, if you were going to college, if you were going to the military, if you were going somewhere else. Imagine the fact that you had your family, hopefully you had parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, somebody, some type of support system for you if you needed them. The children that are in foster care that age out of it do not, they have no one. And so we try to make sure that we're supporting them. They get financial stipends if they are going, bless you, if they're going to school, if they are doing certain things that they need to do, they will receive financial assistance, they will receive school, Medicaid, all of those type of things that will keep them going forward so that they can be productive citizens. That's the goal of the 18 to 21 program. So inside of Wake County, in our foster, so these are homes, the children that are housed in Wake County, we have 276. Outside of Wake County, so it means foster homes that are outside of Wake County, Johnson County, Harnett County. I mean, I have kids all over the state, literally. We have 156. I have 14 kids that are outside of North Carolina. These are typically kids with severe mental health issues that have to go to what's called a PRTF, which is a psychiatric residential treatment facility for them, similar to Dorothea Dix if it had for kids, something like that. I have 14 out of that, and I have 4 kids that are pending placement. I have nowhere for them to go at this moment. The issue with the length of time in foster care, you can see here that children that are 0 to 3 spend the least amount of time, not necessarily looking at the 18, but if you look at that 0 to 3, they spend that's the length of time that they spend in foster care is a lot less because they are typically, most of the people are interested in fostering or adopting those age groups. So whenever you get to ages 4 through 12, those are the more challenging years. You have more behavioral issues, mental health issues, et cetera, and so forth. They stay in a lot longer, 13 to 17. Hopefully they've already been adopted or put back or reunified with their parents by that point, but if not, those are the kind of numbers. And then the 18 and older, we have 56 typically that are in that age group. One thing about this is that the longer that a youth is in foster care, the more likely that they have multiple placements, which is also concerning because foster parents can say, no, I'm not going to take this child. What is the issue that they had before? If they have sexual deviance issues, meaning that they were, most of the time I see that they were sexually molested as a child and then they may sexually molest another child. Foster parents say that's not something that they, can have in their home, those kind of things. And so, it's, that's kind of the issue. And so every move that a child makes in foster care is another broken attachment, another area of broken trust, and then also continues to traumatize them. As well. And so this comes out in their behaviors. It's harder and harder to place them in these therapeutic homes. And the longer that they stay in foster care or in custody, then that's the higher probability that they will age out in the system. So it's important to match a child's needs with the family as early as possible in hopes that they will have the patience and the grace to establish that relationship with the child and try to keep them. It's the saddest thing whenever I have a foster parent that says, I can't do this anymore, and I have to move that child somewhere else, and it's just we call them disruptive placements, that the placement is disrupting, and that's always a challenge moving forward. So we have 3 areas of crisis in Wake County. The first is a lack of foster homes. Our next crisis is youth in the building, and then the last thing are youth aging out of the system. So COVID has really affected our foster homes that we have available. Right now, you can see in 2020 there was 160, 2021 there was 145, now we have 90. So that really has substantially limited our amount of placements that we can have within Wake County for individuals. So that is our first area of crisis. Swinburne Building. Y'all see this? See this right here? Anybody ever been there? Yeah, been in there? Okay, nobody's really been there, right? It is an office building. Literally think of an office, like, you see it, it is an office building. That is where DHHS, Department of Health, the Wake County Department of Health and Human Services, that is where their offices are. So imagine your office, and then imagine a 14, 15, 16, or 17-year-old on a blow-up mattress on the floor. That's what's happening right now. I have between 6 to 9 kids in that building right now. And so the $4,000 that you gave was to support those children that are in there. So you're gonna ask yourself, well, Judge Dunston, what in the world are you doing with kids in a building, right? This is the crisis that we're in right now. This is not an option that Wake County wanted. The issue is that the statute the legislature requires that there are these groups that are responsible for placing children, and they are regionally, they're regionally assigned. And so what happens, ours is Alliance. And so Alliance is responsible for placing our children in these different facilities, like I mentioned, the psychiatric treatment facilities, or in other foster homes, or in other group homes, or something along those lines. That is their job, is to place them. The problem comes in is that we're having more and more children that have severe mental health issues, severe behavioral issues, and these places will not take them. So now what's happening is the county is responsible for these children and they have nowhere for them to go. So it became a thing where it was, at first it was that we only held them there maybe 24 hours until we could find a placement for them. Now it's becoming days, weeks, and months that children are having to stay in there because we cannot find placement for them. So you can imagine what is happening in there is essentially children are running away every single day, just walking out the building, walking back, because they can. Nobody can put their hands on them to necessarily stop them, so it's not a secure facility. except for the fact that they have security there. Children are throwing things over the balcony. They are breaking things. They are attacking staff. It is some of the most, like I said, it's children with the most severe and behavioral issues that really need to be in hospitals, et cetera, and so forth, are in an office building right now. So that is our biggest crisis. The county is working on building or finding a home that they can just begin their own facility in so that we can get the children out of the building. But it is heartbreaking to have the children in there in this sterile place. I mean, these children are the ones who are the most vulnerable and the most neediest children, and to have nowhere really to go but to sleep on a floor and have like those folding things in order to change with one shower on the second floor, because like I said, the building was not created for this. It's just challenging. All right. The other thing that we have an issue with are the youth that are aging out. You saw the statistics earlier for children as far as, the ability to graduate, et cetera, and so forth. And, with the youth that do end up aging out of the system and do not gain permanency with either a guardianship or adoption or something along those lines with the family, I mean, we have higher incidences of them having early pregnancy, experiencing homelessness when they're 18 years old. They have nowhere to go. They are literally on the street. They have no family to take them in, and more likely to end up in prison. 70% of young women become pregnant before 21, 60% end up in the sex industry, 20% instantly become homeless, less than 3% earn a college degree, and 25% experience PTSD. So I did not come here to depress y'all. Sorry. Sorry, my friends. I do apologize. But it's important for us to know what's going on with our children. And we have to know what we can do to support them. And that's the biggest thing, because I didn't know this either until I got in there, and I was just blown away. And we hear about it, but the question is, what are we going to do about it? So I gave you some solutions. First thing that you can do is we need foster parents. If you have the ability or want to look into it, just go to the Wake County website. You can just Wake County Google, Google Wake County Foster. We would love to have good, loving places for these children to go into. And so if that's something that you want to explore, we would we need you if you can do that. Adoption, if that's something that you're interested in, or even just encouraging somebody that that might be looking into or wanting children or wanting more children or something along those lines, just encouraging. I know adoption gets a stigma, but there are some amazing children out there that just need a home and deserve that love. And so adoption is also another way. Another way is guardian ad litem, and that is honestly the way that I think this club could best serve, especially because a lot of y'all retired, I believe. Yeah. So y'all are looking at foster and adoption like, Ashleigh, I can't do a little kid in the house. I get that. But what you could do is become a guardian ad litem. And so that guardian ad litem program is a really great program that you can volunteer in. It's not a huge time commitment unless you want it to be. But essentially what that is that in our courtroom, there are literally 3 tables there. You have the county table, you have the guardian ad litem's table, and you have the parents' table. And each table represents different interests. So the county's interest is saying what the county is doing, the CPS, DSS, what's going on, what are they doing for the child, et cetera, and so forth. The parents' attorney, their interest is obviously the parents, making sure that they're doing what they're doing, what they need to be doing, that kind of thing. And the parents, obviously, if they want the children back, they're going to be representing their interests. But the guardian ad litem table, that is the voice of the child. That person's job, if you decide to be a guardian ad litem, your job would be to be the child's voice. You would reach out to them, you would talk to them, you would engage with them to make sure that their doctor's appointments are being met by the county, making sure that they need clothes or shoes, making sure that if they have a special need or a desire that they want, if they would like to go back to their parents' house, if they would not like to go back to their parents' house, are their therapy appointments being made? Do they need tutoring? All of these things to make sure that the child is successful. You would represent their interests and convey that to the court so that we know what the child wants. That is something that you can do, and it's an amazing program to provide you all the training for it. We always need amazing volunteers, especially most of our guardian ad litems are individuals that have professional degrees. So, that's kind of not saying that's what we're looking for. We're looking for anybody, but this room, I think, would absolutely benefit our guardian ad litem program just because of the wealth of knowledge and experience that you all have and the time that you all have that you could dedicate to our children. But most of the time, these people the guardian ad litems become the best friends to these kids, which is really great. I know I had one guardian, she said, I talk to him 2 to 3 times a week. Mama doesn't even talk to him. He looks forward to those calls from the guardian ad litem. He looks forward to that relationship that he's established with his guardian. So that's a great program. You can give, like we already did, the $4,000 that was given earlier. I mean, there's always a need for that. My church is actually hosting two things in November. We hosted a suitcase and duffel bag drive to make sure that no child, whenever they are being displaced or being moved, that they would have new duffel bags and suitcases. I believe some folks donated to that as well. Thank you so much for that. So we'll continue those efforts. I just say November is suitcase drive, so just remember that next year. I'll be circling back to say, hey guys, suitcases, so you'll know what that's for, is to provide our children with new suitcases and duffel bags so that they have that for them. And then the other thing is through, we're doing an angel tree right now for children that are in kinship care. And so we've hosted 25 children through my church that we will be doing a kinship care for them, via gifts for those children whose grandparents and aunties, one family has like 6 kids in there. So we are providing Christmas for those children. So there's all these great opportunities to serve through the Friends of the Guardian at Lightem, and so I'm happy to connect if that's something that Kiwanis wants to do next year as well. I know we have Poe, and that's great too, but just FYI about those. We need to advocate for the legislature, Gary, for more funding for our child welfare system. There are just so many needs that are just not met. It's just amazing what the lack of funding is leaving us, specifically with mental health. I had no idea that our children were suffering as much as they are, but it really is helping. We need more mental health facilities, state-run facilities if necessary, for our children to house them and to get them the help that they need so they can be productive citizens. So we really need to advocate. So if you have any friends in the legislature, let them know Judge Dunston said, give us some more money, please. And then lastly, another thing that I feel like this club could really do to support is to be that support system for young adults who have aged out. So the way you can do this is through mentorship. You can just checking in on them, hey, how are you doing? For holidays, I mean, they have nowhere to go. You want to come over to my house for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for Easter? Just simple things like that. Just checking in on them regularly. And then lastly, real estate. And this is something that that Wake County is getting really creative with as they look for housing for children who are aging out of the system, that if you're aware of anybody that has an investment property that would rent, they have guaranteed rental assistance that would be paid every single month. But so many people, bless you, so many people do not want to rent to young children or 18-year-olds. They would not feel comfortable with that, or they would not feel comfortable maybe because of not having a background check and not having all these things but this is a need for them. Haven House has some housing, which is amazing, but we need more housing. Like I literally have a child that aged out 2 weeks ago, and he was going to get kicked out of the facility when he turned 18, and there was nowhere for him to go because his parents said he could not go home. So I think literally he's on the street with a bag and his ID. And like I said, there's nothing we could do about that. So if you know of anybody who has any properties that they'd be willing to rent to children aging out of the system, then that would be a really great help as well. So, any questions? Oh, went the wrong way.
I said, duh.
Yes. Yeah.
It's done. Yep.
Why is there any more what? Because we have more kids. Just because of the size. It's the largest we're the largest population. We are the largest county in the state of North Carolina. And so because of the population, also because of the transiency as well, that's why we have so many. But our resources are coming in they're coming in more limited, even though we have more children that are in the county. So that's why we have more children. And microphone's not working. Lee doesn't need a microphone.
Hello.
Hey.
When I grew up here in Raleigh, I never heard of trafficking. Could you elaborate a little? When I think of trafficking, I think of, I guess, immigration or prostitution or something like that. But elaborate on what is that? How big is it? And when did it come to Raleigh?
Well, it's always been here. It's just we finally put a name on it. It's child prostitution, basically. Child exploitation, child prostitution. I mean, it's really become more pervasive because of internet, because, websites, Back in the day, it used to be like, what, Craigslist and Backpage and all that kind of stuff where you could, get illicit things. Now they're finding other ways in the dark web to traffic children. And so it just became, instead of saying prostitution, which kind of put it more on the actual person or on the victim or survivor, then it now puts it more on the act of what's happening to that person, so that we stop punishing people for being quote unquote prostitutes and understood that there was likely that this has gone on since they were 13, 14, 15, 16. The way that it happens, we think about a lot of, you're hearing cases all the time about young girls meeting someone online. They end up taking them to wherever, kidnapping them and those kind of things. That happens everywhere. So, I might have a kid from Maryland who we just happen to find in a hotel who has been, sex trafficked by an older individual or something along those lines. The other challenge is that human trafficking can also come in the form of servitude. I had a case where a child was brought in from Mexico and her dad basically gave her to a woman to do, cleaning and cooking and taking care of the kids and those kind of things. You don't see that as often, but definitely the sex trafficking is huge. In fact, in Cumberland County, because they're off of 95, I think they're off of 95 and what's the other one? Who's from Fayetteville? Yes, because of the military base, because of 95. I thought there was another highway that ran through there. Well, 40, I guess, is kind of close. Anyways, because of that, they have a huge amount, in Lumberton too, huge amount of cases that they've actually established a human trafficking courtroom just for those victims and just for those type of cases and situations, which is great. It's the first in the state. So they're going to be studying that to see if that's something that we can continue to do in other places. So they're doing some really good work there with that. Yes, hey.
How do you survive and leave your job at work and have a life without carrying 300 children's problems around with you?
Nothing but the grace of God keeps me in my right mind. That's the only answer that I have. I truly feel like God has called me to not necessarily be a judge. I mean, he called me for this season to be a judge, but he said, while you're there, make the biggest impact that you can make for the time that I've given you. And knowing my heart for children, I'm grateful that I'm able to compartmentalize, and I'm able to address, don't get me wrong, there's days I'm in there crying. There's days that it's difficult, but I don't shy away from that. But I just know that God has placed all of us in a place and an opportunity to make a difference. And that's what I see happening every day, that God put me here to make this difference for those children. Even if I just affect one life, that's something. So I'm just grateful for that opportunity, and I thank him every day for that.
I would just like to say one thing, that I am so thankful that God has you here in Wake County.
Thank you.
Is there any place, I know y'all have tried everywhere, but Dorothea Dick, or it's gone, but something like that, or in Butner where the kids could stay rather than that building?
We have tried everything and everywhere. Right now, Wake Med is, I think, building a new facility so that they can have some more beds for children, but it's just, timing is off, COVID and everything else. It just literally hit everybody at one time, that everybody's just scrambling to try to figure out what it is. But I promise you, nobody wants those babies in the building, not only because it's not good for them, but it's also a liability for the county. And so we have been really putting our heads together for the last year, some change to try to figure out what we can do. And so we're just trying to do the best we can, trying to move quickly.
I'm very proud of what you're doing.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you.
Again, thank you for what you're doing. I just wish you the very best. One thing I've not heard, and I don't know if it's something you can talk about or not, is birth control with these young gals. Obviously, they're gonna be having sex for whatever reason. Is there something? Is there a birth control situation that would ever work to try to cut down on some of these pregnancies?
Yeah, I will tell you, I love birth control. I think it's great. But it's also something that you have to take. So you have the one issue if you have irresponsibility, right, of somebody not necessarily taking it. The next thing is I can't necessarily hold the kids down and order them to get the shot, which is done every 3 months or something along those lines. The issue with the pregnancy is not so much the children that I have in my care. Like I can't think of a case that I have that a child is in care, like in foster care, and gets pregnant. I have not had one of those yet, not saying that won't happen. The problem is that they run away from the foster care system because they don't want to be in it, and now they're out in the streets. And when they're in the streets, anything happens. They're likely living with a boyfriend, that boyfriend's parents, they're probably sleeping in the same bed, or they're being trafficked or something along those lines, or they're in the sex industry or something along those lines, but they are still considered to be in the foster system or have been in the foster system because that is basically the title that they have, that's just where they are because they're not at home. And so that is where we're seeing that. On top of that, children are abused sometimes in the foster care system because people just want to do it for money. So we have bad people that are in there that I'm trying to weed out, once I find out. But so there's also those instances of children being abused in foster care that can lead to them later on engaging in risky behavior, trying to self-medicate or self-soothe. And the last thing is, it is so important for little girls to have their daddies in their lives. I'm so grateful. I'm a daddy's girl myself, so grateful for him. But if it had not been for the love of my father, I don't know where I would be. And so a lot of these girls are out looking for that love in these wrong places. And so the enemy is busy, the devil is busy, and that's why we have to stay diligent and stay prayerful for our children, that they will know that he is the love that they need, and that they need to seek love from him and not from a person. All right, thank y'all so much for having me.
Judge Dunston, we appreciate that. I think that meant a lot to us, especially at this holiday season, and if any of you can help them, please do that. It's very, very important. To all of you who are visitors today, thank you for coming. Please come again. Again, if you come to 3 meetings, you qualify to be a member, just sign in an application and give us a check. We'll see what we can do about getting you in, and there's a good chance we'll get you in. Remember, next week is the ugly t-shirt. Next week is the ugly t-shirt contest, so don't forget that. Sweaters, ugly sweater contest. Okay, if you don't have a sweater and you just have a t-shirt, that's fine too. But until next week, thank you so much. Have a good week. God bless you all.